Welcome to the TTT News Special. I'm DK Rossa. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are joined by an everything man at this point in time. Educator, thespian, band leader, artist, Nickolai Salcedo. And he's joining us on the heels of the release of Abina, his latest creative output. How you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. I've found it very hard not to do the whole makeout scenes and get a piece of Jesus Christ Superstar. That would have been 2005.
Right. Yeah.
But let's start off at this point in time, and then if possibly we might go back or whatever. But what is your current work looking like at this point in time?
My current work is actually, as you said earlier, I just released a new single called Abina. That's under my performance name, Gazette. So I've been working on new music with my brother, Super Youth. He's my producer. And just utilizing the lockdown in a creative way, into channeling all of those feelings of feeling trapped and everything I've been observing happening in the world back into the music and in my art. And, outside of that, I've been home like everybody else who's not an essential service. So I've actually been just using the time. And I think now I'm just ready to jump back out with, new material. I haven't done music in quite a few years because my life got taken over with film acting. And now I'm like, hey, let's go back and, get back into music and do this next side of yourself again.
And that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. And I want to get back to that labeling of essential services, but not right now. But
yeah.
How does your work now, your current work, follow your origins as a creative? Because as you said, or as we spoke about a little earlier, there is the theater side of it. You just spoke about hero or film. So how does that tie in where you are now to what you've been doing a little while?
Well, what I'm doing right now, I think, has been a culmination of years of years of just absorption. And I tend to go through that. I tend to go through periods like that. So, for instance, I was doing Gazette for a number of years, about 7 years ago, I think. And then my life got taken over with film. And I had reached a point where I had begun to feel a bit stagnant in terms of what I was doing creatively with music. So film took over because I felt like, okay, there's a chance to really, learn new things and explore new parts of the world, new sides of myself, learn new things about myself. And now what my work is doing is I think now that I've absorbed all of those new influences, going to Ghana for Hero, going to South Africa for Hero, visiting the UK and Berlin, all of these travels have kind of now made their way, I think, into what I'm doing now, into the sound that I'm working on now, and into the messages too, because I've had the chance now to be to different countries and experience the similarities between the struggles that we have here and there, as well as the cultural similarities and things that actually, I think we've picked up here or carried on here, even just something as simple as going to Ghana and hearing people's trips in everywhere and, seeing how everything that's in some countries could feel so much like home. And then at the same time, you go somewhere else where it doesn't feel like home at all, but you meet people that make you feel like this is very similar, or this person is so similar to somebody I know. Those kinds of experiences really change me and affect me, and they have. And now I think my work is just really rechanneling it, as well as for the past year being in lockdown and observing what's been going on across the globe. With Black Lives Matter having that big blow up of a kind of global movement last year, that really propelled me to do the work I'm doing now too. And seeing the things that have been going on in this society and the way in which we've been, these societies are kind of like, I think, not taking certain things seriously. So hence Abina. Abina really is a song that came out of me watching the ways in which men have been violating women's bodies and spaces, and just really, That's the kind of gruesome deaths and murders we've been hearing about. Those things just propelled me to do what I'm doing now, because I felt like, man, that's what Gazette was always about. It was always me speaking about everything, because the root of Gazette is calypso and social commentary. So I think through Abina and everything and all my work now, the push has been about that. Sorry, yeah.
And I want to dive down into Abina in a little bit, but at the same time, you spoke about that period of absorption. Mm-hmm. Are there specific things that you see within yourself or the way that you channel your music that you say, okay, well, Gazette a little while ago is different in this way as you see it now?
Yeah, so Gazette before was, I think, me attempting to do a kind of, roots rock outfit, where I was more focused on, I guess, how the music made me feel. And it was very much me operating as a visual artist in a musician's world. I've spent most of my younger years as a visual artist. That's originally my first creative output was art. But what that trained me to do is work in a silo. So I can work by myself very comfortably. But when it comes to actually putting work out for, employing the services of others to really, collaborate and get a product out, I think that's where things have really changed. Because now it's less about me trying to just be like, this is what I want to do. And now it's become more about, hey, like, there is a collaborative process that needs to take place between myself and the producer and another songwriter, because my wife Dahlia, she's helped with songwriting, because she's a songwriter, an award-winning songwriter. So I think now my work is it really is more communicative and or at least attempting to be that, really pushing for that. Because I feel like that's what art is all about. If you're not trying to communicate with your public, then what are you doing it for? It's just for you,
And that makes me wonder, you actually kind of jumped into my next question. How do you traverse those spaces and those pathways working between music, theater, visual arts? Is it something where they fight for primacy of place, or is it that everything goes towards the eventual output that we see, hear, or feel?
It depends, because sometimes it's a fight. And that fight only comes if there are different projects happening, right? So there have been times while working on music that I booked an exhibition, I might book a group exhibit, and I have to prepare work for that. In which case, I have to take time out of every day and focus on getting art pieces done, right? But at all times, I think I try to compartmentalize and give each thing its own space. I do know that if one thing has to take primacy and has to take, center stage for a bit, then everything else will go on the back burner. It doesn't necessarily mean that work isn't happening in those other areas, but it's just they have to take a sidestep, But occasionally, I do, have projects. I do have projects where it requires all the different disciplines or a couple of the different disciplines. So for instance, I have my music coming out now. Then when it comes to music videos, that's going to be acting in there as well. If it comes to artwork for, the promotion of songs, or even, promotion of Gazette as a musical entity, I have to employ my artistic skills outside of even getting someone else to do the main graphic designing behind it. As a visual artist, I'm also looking at it and thinking, all right, cool, well, how could I add my touch to this? Because at the end of the day, this is me, and I like having myself in what I'm doing.
Totally get that. We continue the conversation. When we return, we are speaking with Nickolai Salcedo, and the entire topic is under the umbrella Abina and the divine feminine energy. We'll get a little more into that energy when we return. Stay with us.
I wanna call out a spade when I say that the man was a little fresh up. He pushing hard for a dance with the girl, but she now feel rubby, so he pushing up and say, baby, I want to take you back home tonight. I've been a clock him in the face with a bottle that was sitting on the right.
Abina hit him in the face with a bottle that was sitting on the right. And this is how we welcome you back. We are speaking with the Renaissance Man Nickolai Salcedo. And give us a little idea. Is Abina based on a specific person? Is Abina based on a group of people? Or
Abina is based. Abina is a song I wrote inspired by, number one, all of the stories I've heard from all, or at least most of the women in my life throughout the years. I could start with my mom. I could go to my wife. I could go to so many of my female friends. Like the stories that women have told me about the things that they've had to endure from men, kind of shocked me into really just thinking, well, what needs to happen? Like, what needs to happen to this society? And I mean, so I wrote Abina as and released the song first because, in fact, for me, I wrote her as the spirit of the age. She to me was really the embodiment of all of the social underdogs around the world, really just, getting fed up of being treated like crap and hitting back, So it's not a call for violence or anything like that. It's more allegory and symbolism, but at the same time, it's a direct commentary on, men harassing women, but nobody ever thinking what happens when you come across the wrong person, And in a way, it was just, me, I guess, writing and feeling like, well, why do women have to go through that? And what happens if they actually do strike back, How can they defend themselves?
And actually, today I was mentioning to somebody, sometimes years down, moments down, further down the line, you realize, but wait now. You have an experience and you play it back in your mind now that you have a little more sense about you. Because I like to say, when you get big, you mustn't be big and dotish. So you're thinking about it and you're saying, I really wasn't right there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is the shadow work that we as men need to do on a very consistent basis, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. But
it never is. It never is.
And what could be joke for your schoolboy could be dead for somebody else, crapo. And
exactly.
So unfortunately, we see that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so you're saying that is something that we have to do as men, and for me, it's never easy. I could tell you, and I'm telling you this because I know I've lived it. I've lived having women in my life watch me and tell me, hey, you have your own chauvinism, or you have your own sexism that you practice that you don't even take note of, perhaps, right? Because to you it's always been normal. You consider it normal behavior, in a way it's like I've been watching all these videos of in the States how white people are, what they call Karens. But how white people in the States might carry on and flip out, and it becomes this thing, and what they call the fragility and all that. And I'm like, yeah, men have a fragility too about these kinds of issues, because it's something we haven't had to face. And now that the society is kind of like waking up, now that women themselves are actually empowering themselves to be like, hey, I'm gonna call it as it is. Then I feel like it's upon us now to also do it, to call ourselves out, to call, just even call it out in you, and it's a struggle, but it's a struggle I feel is necessary, because I don't want the women in my life to have to continue to live in a world where, they're not treated with a certain amount of respect, like the kind of, I mean, I don't know, DK, I'm saying all of this now, and I'm wondering even if, I'm sure you've heard stories, man, like this place is full of so much abuse. As a country, as a culture, there is a lot of abuse in the history of this space. That's built into the way we treat each other, even man to man and woman to woman, anybody to anybody. The way we treat and deal with each other, so far less for situations where I think there's a dynamic or a perceived dynamic of one has more power than the other. Then the abuse just goes up tenfold. you know.
This reminds me of something that the Caribbean Male Action Network, or Carryman, speaks about, and they talk about a triangle of violence with regard to men, in terms of like men committing violence to other men committing violence to women, and men committing violence to themselves. And it's definitely something to look at. But as opposed to just saying, okay, you're up in your feelings, feeling fragile, batting off the back foot, you are doing something about it. So give me a little idea, some backstory on the panel discussion that is carded for the 30th of June, please.
Well, so the panel discussion came out of Abina. I launched Abina, and right before launching it, I had a few friends listening back to it, and quite a few of them, these women, some real lionesses for real, but they were so ready for the revolution. But the questions that they posed to me were geared towards, okay, well, what are we concretely going to do? At which point I was faced with now the dilemma of, okay, well, you're an artist, but how much further than the art is it going to go? How do you actually use the art now to engage in a social discussion that could actually, benefit those who choose to take part, listen in, and engage? And how do you create a forum for people to engage? So we created this idea of this panel, and we were like, okay, we invited Freetown, because in fact, Freetown Collective has actually been, they released their song Cassandra, which I think is a song about, for me, it's a song about the divinity of femininity, right? And then Annalie Prime has a song called I'm So Tired, which I felt it's so within the vein of what Abina was, except it was from a different standpoint, with a totally different drive behind it and a totally different, I guess, angle. But it's the same concept kept reappearing for us. I felt like, the panel, and for me, the panel needed more than just Gazette. It can't be a panel if it's just a Gazette thing and Gazette come and sit on. And I don't want to lecture to anybody. I'd like to have a conversation. So I felt like, well, it's best for us to have these other artists who kind of on the same wavelength, as well as we're going to have Natalie Tonkara and Desiree Gordon as well, who are also dropping in. It's being moderated by Jamie Filbert, who operates out of Bois Academy. And incidentally, who I think was the perfect person to not moderate it, because she's a living embodiment of a Bois woman, which is what Abina is, But yeah, we wanted to have a panel discussion to really find a way to discuss and invite people in to engage in the discussion. And this is hopefully the first of a series, perhaps, because I was even thinking, okay, how do we get people involved in the actual creation of legislature, or even on the level of the Ministry of Education, having the ability to introduce things into the curriculum or schools where we're training young boys and young girls, where we kind of train them into a proper understanding of how they should be interacting with each other, because it needs to happen at that level. Big grown people have already set themselves in the ways. I know that if I try to change now, yes, some things might change, but there's a lot about me that's really set in stone almost. It's been trained through day-to-day practice of life. But, when we have the chance to really, and I can say this as a former teacher, because I used to teach art. I was an art teacher for 6 years in Cooper East Secondary. Big up to Cooper East, boom. But when we have a chance to really talk to kids, talk to children and help influence them in a better direction, man, that to me is something you need to jump at. That's something we need to take a chance at. So for now, we just really want to have this first initial discussion and use our 3 songs, Cassandra, Abina, and I'm So Tired, to really use that as a jumping off point into the discussion.
All right, so we have 1.5 minutes before. I have 2 comments and a question. And I really appreciate what it is you're saying in terms of sometimes not even knowing. And plain talk, bad manners. One of the things, I grew up in a household that there were more females than males. So there's some things you didn't need to tell me in terms of like putting on the flap of the toilet. This is just normal things that you don't think about because you've been trained that way. And another thing is that I think it's important to have the panelists that you do, because sometimes you find men speaking to women, or women speaking to the universe, or women speaking to themselves, but not necessarily having that dialogue between, which is very needed at this point in time. But with that said, how do people engage on this very important and timely conversation that is happening on the 30th?
Well, so let me just first say it's happening tomorrow night, 30th at 8 p.m. Now, it's going to be broadcast over Facebook through Nickolai Salcedo's page, and I guess anybody else that we're going to probably try and be sharing it as well, sharing the stream. But we're broadcasting it on Facebook, and people can put comments there. We're going to have people reading the comments to the panelists while we're operating and having a discussion. So really, it's a chance for people to, come. The thing is, ultimately, because of the virtual nature of everything, we of course can't just have people hopping on to, just hopping into to just throw questions and make statements. But by just making a comment, putting it in the comment section, put your comments in the comment section, put a comment, an observation, anything that you want the panel to address if we haven't addressed it. We're going from 8 to 10 p.m. tomorrow night, so it's going to be a nice 2-hour session where people get enough of a chance to really get in on the discussion. And we really want to address it and take the time to answer and deal with all of the possible, areas and things that could crop out of it. And because I think, especially because of the nature of this society and the kind of things that go on here and the kind of stories that we have here, I'm assuming that we're going to have a nice, robust conversation where we get into all manner of things.
And definitely that conversation is going to be longer than this one because we're out of time right about now. But we thank you for making the time so that we could spark some interest on that. And on behalf of the entire news team, I'm DK Rosta. Thank you, Nickolai Salcedo, for putting in the work, and have a good one. This has been the TTT News Special.